So hey Henry, how you doing?
Good. It's a nice day.
It's gorgeous.
Better than yesterday. Is the audio working okay?
Yeah, the audio is working great.
Good.
Yeah.
Nice fall day.
My God, the leaves on the trees are.
Yeah, they took a while to come out.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to winter, but
No. A lot of metaphors and seasons, though, huh?
sure. The constant changing. And that being said, I like 3 seasons out of 4. You know?
Yeah.
Although when I used to do more outdoor activities,
Summer, you don't like summer?
no, I do. I don't like winter, right?
I know, I figured as much.
But when I used to ski and do more outdoor activities in the winter, that made it more fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can walk through the meadow. There's
Yeah,
a
I'd
meadow
love to.
that was so. There's a herd of deer that come through and make their home there. Travel around everybody's backyard and eat the leaves and vegetables as you're growing them.
Do their deer thing.
They do their deer thing. It's fun in the winter. We can see them coming up, and when it's cold out in the snow,
Yeah.
and have the fire on in the fireplace, and you can see them coming up to the window to look almost.
Oh, wow.
They don't get right up to the window yet. So you were
Yeah.
talking about the seasons. Everything changes and everything builds on everything else.
Yeah.
So, you know, when springtime comes around, we're going to be talking about how the spring is going to be affected by the snow cover of the winter.
Yes.
And if we don't get enough snow, we won't have enough water in the spring.
Yep.
And then if the spring is too wet, it'll destroy the growing season. And if the summer is too hot,
Yeah.
you have a drought. Everything builds
Yeah.
on something else. So
Well, it's so interesting because I really feel like you're pointing to the deep overarching lesson for my soul in this incarnation, which is moderation. Learning moderation.
well, it's also this whole podcast on unraveling religion.
Yeah.
It's you don't strike me as somebody who's keeping something static or pure in that sense of once created a certain way, it can never change. I mean, the whole point is
I hope not. Yeah. Thank you for
Right.
noticing. Right.
right. And as I think about it more and more, that's what that when I got introduced to the Sufi path I follow, that's the path that had changed the idea of Sufism pretty dramatically. So when I got introduced in the West
Yeah.
by Inaya Khan,
Yeah.
who was from India, the first thing he did was make it universal. You didn't have to be Muslim.
Right. Just
Well-
human.
Right.
Sure.
Sufi path.
Yeah.
But to me, that's an example of syncretism. It changed. What he actually did was, he didn't say this, but you know, there's the perennial philosophy. You find the thread that goes through all the traditions.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he teaches.
Yeah.
So he was teaching opening up and being more universal and inclusive and accepting
Yep.
and not so demanding that you had to follow an exoteric religion.
Yep.
And so to me, that keeps moving and it keeps changing.
Yeah.
If that became static, never to be influenced by something else,
Right.
well, that wouldn't be natural.
Right.
And
Well, I think of this in terms of like, you know, my adherence is like really, my attraction is to like Buddhism, Zen Buddhism,
right,
and also Judaism.
yeah,
And, you know, I think that the Zen reflects better the ever-changing makeup of life, the deep river flow of life, you know? Because
Correct.
life is ever-changing, ever-flowing.
right.
Yeah.
And most of the Well, in the Sufi tradition, at least, the teaching is you follow nature. Nature is the greatest teacher.
Yeah. Yeah.
So nature is always changing, like we
Yeah.
talked about.
Yeah.
Is there only one way to have spring? I mean, how can you say that?
Right.
There's something that's spring-like. I
Yeah.
know spring when I feel it, but it's almost like a quality.
Yeah.
So
Right, yeah.
the explorations of shamanism that I'm doing, it's become so much more meaningful to call in the directions, calling in the energy of the south and the west and the north.
Yeah.
And you want to go through the meadow?
Yeah, let's go through the meadow. This is beautiful.
It's kind of, again, kind of strange to find this here. Oh, it's nice in the fall with all the leaves down.
Yeah.
And this town has a whole network of trails
Uh-huh.
that is really amazingly pretty and extensive. And one of my favorite trails, you come off, you enter behind the church,
Yep.
and very quickly you're in a place that you start going up and down these hills.
Yeah.
You come up on a stream.
Yeah.
You're really in a pretty deep valley,
Yeah.
and you hear traffic like we hear, but it starts to sound natural. It starts to sound like the ocean,
Oh.
and you can walk for miles.
Oh.
And you're up and down these trails,
Yeah.
and it's really gorgeous.
Now, whatever age you're at, Henry,
Yeah.
whatever age that is,
Yeah.
are you feeling fulfilled? Are you feeling fulfilled in sort of like your path and journey, your soul's journey?
Yeah, I have to say yes. I still have a restlessness.
Yeah.
I'm not fulfilled like I'm done,
Mm-hmm.
and I still have things I want to do and ideas.
Yeah.
So it isn't a static thing. It's not fulfilled in the sense of done.
Right.
It's fulfilled in the sense that I think I found a niche that I like. It feels like it has a purpose and a meaning.
Yeah.
It seems valuable for more than just me, the people that I work with.
Yeah.
Just the fun we have and the audience we reach with the podcast.
Yeah.
That's,
It's a beautiful thing.
yeah, it is. And so the podcast that I have, the Alchemical Dialogues,
Yeah.
and I think with Unraveling Religion too, but I don't know all of the guests that you've had.
Uh-huh.
The niche that got created is people that I know that most of them don't have a national prominence,
Right.
but the work they're doing, once they start talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
is so moving.
Yeah.
And with most of them, you included, it's more than I knew when I knew them just as a friend and we would have
Right.
casual conversations.
Yes.
When I say, well, would you like to do a podcast? I know you're interested in, etc., whatever.
Yep.
We start talking about it. The breadth and or the depth, what they're doing, the meaning that they have in their life
Yeah.
and how it's affected other people
Yeah.
it's hard. You just can't ignore that.
Right.
And so there's a gratification at whoever the audience is that can listen to this,
Yeah.
realizing here are people like all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Some of us may have a larger sphere of influence than others, but
Like in every person.
every person has this ability when they find something that's so meaningful to them and
Yeah.
they start sharing it. The influence that has,
Mm-hmm.
and just hearing a person's experience,
Yeah.
for me has been really inspirational.
Yeah.
And I know it's inspired other people, and
Yeah.
like most things, other people are starting to make connections with people who are on the podcast, and you start learning from each other.
But I wanted to ask you, What first drew you to the spiritual path?
I was a somewhat unhappy psychiatrist. I was in the middle of my career, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and I was doing okay.
Yep.
And whoops, might have been. We're gonna back.
Yeah,
we're gonna
yeah.
Go this way.
Sounds
and loop
great.
around. I think I was running a training program,
Uh-huh.
and you know, I had a good life, and but there was something unsettling,
Yeah.
and
Would you describe it as the same restlessness that you have now, or
Oh, no.
something else?
No,
Something
no,
else.
something else.
Yeah.
Here it's a restlessness to do more,
I understand that.
Not-
Yeah.
to do more of what I'm doing, and
Yep.
to make it more creative, and to reach out to more people, and to go deeper.
Yeah.
Back then, it was more like something was missing.
Yeah.
I don't feel like there's something missing now. It's like we're walking on this path. I'm on the path that I want to be on.
Yeah.
That feels like the right path.
Yeah.
But I want to see what's around the corner
Sure.
because there's something more.
There's curiosity.
Right.
Yeah.
Back
Things
then,
that remain. Yeah.
it felt like this isn't as fulfilling as it could be, or it
Yeah.
should be. Something was missing.
Yeah.
So some of that was personal, my personal life. Some of it was professional life, and I think that got me curious.
Yeah.
And
What a blessing to have that unsettledness.
yeah, I mean, it was uncomfortable, and I
Yeah.
had it again. But it felt like it only happened once
Yeah.
until things seemed to click. So that was one, and then, boy, I can't quite remember how it happened. It was during that time. I read a book by Tom Brown Jr. And I think I was hiking, and I was in good shape. I was riding horses, I was hiking, I was backpacking.
Yeah.
But I really don't know a lot about nature. And I picked up a field guide by Tom Brown Jr.,
Okay.
who's a famous tracker. And it was actually a pretty good field guide that helped me understand some things to look for.
Yep.
And then he had written a series of books that were kind of autobiographical.
Yeah.
And I picked up the first one, and I read it, and I liked it. It was,
Yeah.
about how he fell into his path as a kid,
Right.
at the early part of his training as a 12-year-old boy.
Right.
So I knew there was a whole series of these, and I was curious. So I haven't told you the story before.
I don't think so.
I went to Chicago to take my board exams
Yeah.
in child psychiatry. It was an overnight exam.
Uh-huh.
So I had one set of exams, and then I had nothing to do, and I was there by myself. So I went to a restaurant, and I was hanging out someplace, and I went to a bookstore.
Yeah.
And honest to God, I'm in
Yep.
front of the shelf.
Yeah.
I didn't touch the shelf,
Yeah.
right? And a book falls out.
Yeah.
And I go down to pick it up at my feet, and it's the second volume of that series by Tom Brown.
Sure. Sure.
So even then, I
Yeah.
knew that meant I should probably buy that. And I also,
I mean, even with do you have a very different or a subtle level of different awareness now?
yeah, I'm more willing to admit it now
Yeah. Yeah.
than I would have been back
Sure.
then.
Sure.
And I also had the feeling, not only should I read it, but it probably means I should read them in sequence,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
which is, I can't
That's a good
prove-
inference. Yeah.
Well, when I read it, when I got to the fourth or fifth one, I reflected and said, if I had read, the fourth or fifth first, I'm not sure I would have even gone back to read anything,
Sure.
because it brought me along. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, well, if you believe the story in the first one, then you're more open to the second.
Sure.
If
it
you believe
evolves.
the second,
Yeah,
you're a little
yeah.
more open to the third.
Sure.
If
It's
you
like a
start
slow
in-
awakening,
Right.
like a
If
soda
you start in
awakening.
the middle, you would say, what's he talking about?
Right.
you know, this can't be. This is all fiction. So that was a big piece. That started. So it started getting me a little more aware of forces in nature that
Yeah.
were beyond me.
Yep.
And then we live in an area that has some indigenous influence.
Yeah.
And I was living in Victor then. And I started to volunteer at a Native American historical site and learned a little about that. And so started reading about indigenous and got a little curious about that, but didn't have, I can't remember when I did my first sweat lodge, but some experiences with that. But I didn't have a teacher, I didn't have a strong connection. I really, that's a hard connection for me.
What's a hard connection for you?
Being connected to indigenous,
Yeah.
because sometimes I don't feel it. I feel like it's not.
It feels foreign.
It feels foreign to me.
Yeah.
So I stuck with it for a while. That got me interested in shamanism,
Yeah.
and I went to a seminar in Boston
Yeah.
with Michael Harner.
Uh-huh.
The instructions were bring a rock with you.
Mm-hmm.
So this was back before the days of airline security like it is now.
Right.
So I had this rock that I really liked, but it was pretty big.
Uh-huh.
And so I brought it. I got in okay. Bringing it back, they actually looked at me and said, "What are you doing with this rock?" And I can't remember what I said, but I would never be allowed on the plane now. I'm kidding. So anyways, so here it is, my first real exposure to shamanism besides reading. I think it was The Way of the Shaman by Mike Harner.
Mm-hmm.
And this was my attempt to get more in touch with nature
Yeah.
and something more indigenous.
Yeah.
I remember the teaching with the rock was look at the rock and let it speak to you.
Yeah.
And in spite of that, I got to admit, I came back and I tried drumming and I tried journeying, and it just
It opened you to something, though.
Well, now I know that because
Yeah,
here we
yeah.
are, like
Yeah.
how many decades later,
Yeah.
and I'm exploring shamanism more seriously and doing it with a group of people and
Yeah.
taking journeys and
Yeah.
integrating it with the Sufi practice. So it did make an impact,
Yeah.
but it did start something.
Yeah.
It started me about thinking about the unseen,
Oh.
and I kept reading
Yeah.
Tom Brown stuff
Yeah.
and got some things out of that. Actually, I fell into Buddhism,
Oh.
and that's
Tibetan
what,
Buddhism, right?
Tibetan Buddhism, right? And so it started with some feeling like it was like my midlife turn,
Uh-huh. Sure.
but it was a feeling of emptiness. There was something not right.
Yeah.
Something was missing,
Yeah.
and it was internal. I had the external stuff.
Very common in our culture.
Yeah, and you know,
You get the role, but you don't have the inner life.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I got serious in Tibetan Buddhism, and then because of a variety of circumstances, I fell into Sufism, which felt much more like me. That felt
Yeah.
like home.
Sufism really, it feels like the deepest resonance for you.
Oh, it does. It still does.
Yeah.
If I had to guess what was happening, is I was being drawn to mysticism,
Yeah.
to having and trusting my own personal experience
Yeah.
of purpose, meaning, and connection.
Sure.
But it had to be mine.
Yeah.
And every time I would get into something organized, there was something about,
You brush up against the edges of it. Yeah.
right, but I took something from it.
Yep.
And so, Sufism was the one that I stayed with an organization the longest of anything.
Yeah.
But when I look back now, the mystical path that I'm following doesn't, I call it Sufism, but it doesn't have a name anymore.
Right.
It's mysticism. It's a little
Yeah.
bit of shamanism, a little bit of being respectful of what I learned from the indigenous explorations.
Yep.
There's some Buddhism in it.
Right.
I'm studying with somebody.
Oh, yeah.
We are. Somebody recently got interested in studying Sufism with me.
Mm-hmm.
His background is Christianity.
Yeah.
So we're studying the Lord's Prayer in the original Aramaic.
Yep.
And that was researched by a Sufi. And so we're studying that book.
Yeah.
And I have some experience with that. But it's reawakening some of the Christian things. And I never had that presented to me by a teacher.
Yeah.
So, I had a Catholic upbringing in elementary school, high school, even college. But it was all traditional, conservative. Nowhere did I get introduced by a mentor about anything mystical.
Right.
And I didn't get it on my own. So that's a long answer to how it gets started. But
Gotta love it, though.
What's fun now is that I can see the thread
Yeah.
that I was following without really knowing what I was following.
Yep.
And now it's getting integrated. So Thomas More wrote one of my favorite books of his is A Religion of One's Own.
Yep.
I got attracted to it because of what I was going through.
Yeah.
But I think about it now and it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
He's obviously not the only one,
Yep.
but he and others like him, are opening up. No, you do have to make it your own.
Yeah.
And you can learn from different paths at the same time,
Yep.
but it has to become your own.
Yeah.
And I'm really intrigued with that because I think it's a matter of respect.
Yeah.
It's a matter of
And asking permission and an honoring of the teachings. Yeah.
It's the honoring. It's not just the taking.
Yeah.
It's an honoring. And how that honoring happens,
Yeah.
sometimes it's with the teacher. Sometimes it might be internal.
Yep. Can you talk a little bit about Amberlight?
Sure. So Amberlight International is a not-profit, educational, spiritual corporation that we're keeping really loose. There's no membership fee. You don't join. You just can hang out with us and come to classes and come to celebrations. It's a spiritual educational organization.
That's wonderful.
As opposed to how it was first set up, which was the spiritual is integrated into the mind-body focus. So we kept it pretty low-key
Yeah.
for years, and we would co-sponsor some of the Sufi activities we did with a local organization to keep it alive and develop a mailing list.
Yeah.
And then when I changed the leadership, we just redesigned the website
Okay.
and added new activities and podcasts. And we're still adding things and changing things. So we can reach people and people can find us. But that's pretty exciting. We started off with some teachings from Anaya Khan about desire, wish, and will.
Uh-huh.
How do you manifest things that you
Sure.
want?
Sure.
Or not selfishly, but that are kind of like, what's your purpose?
Right.
And then over the years, I started including some teachings from psychology, Buddhism. So the group came up with a group wish. And interestingly enough, I didn't expect that. That was the first time we did it. And it was a group of about 12 people.
Yeah.
So it was really intensive. And so the inspiration came that the group would come up with a wish. And we did.
Uh-huh.
And it took 2 or 3 more years. And within the group, and this requires a certain degree of faith and trust and confidence, you could see it manifesting in the group.
Mm-hmm.
And then there seemed to be a turning point. Some people left, some new people came in, and then we continued on that, but started incorporating some shamanic practices and healing practices and Buddhist practices, and it got to a deeper level. It wasn't a wish for the group. It's what the group could do for the greater humanity.
Sure. Sure.
And now it's at another turning point. So some people are leaving, and it's open for some new people to come in. So we did that, and seeing how people's lives have started to change and how the group has changed, and the group has become more supportive and cohesive,
Yeah.
and people are starting to feel their ability to lead and to offer more freely. That's really, I love teaching, and I'd love to see that blossoming
Sure.
and how exciting it is.
Yeah. Uh huh.
We do almost everything, by the way, in Amberlight on Zoom,
Uh huh.
and if you're around, we can do it. We do it simultaneously with a certain number of people gathering.
Yep.
But COVID threw a monkey wrench in that.
Sure. Sure.
The stories people tell of how it changed their lives,
Yeah.
just,
Gives you purpose. Gives you meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the changes have stayed, and to see people using it personally, using it in relationships,
Yep.
applying the principles to different situations.
Yep.
So what
This
I don't
is all
have,
part of this is all part of your path, Henry.
Yeah.
You know.
I work with some of these people pretty closely. So
Uh-huh.
I still guide people spiritually,
Yep.
and so most of the people in the class, but not all of them, were students that I guide regularly. So I
Yeah.
could really feel the changes that were happening.
Yeah.
They've talked about and demonstrated the changes,
Yeah.
and so it's a mix of humanistic psychology, philosophy, with spiritual practices, and most of the traditions that we're taking from spiritually are Buddhists, mostly Sufi, some shamanic, because I got exposed to that as well.
Uh huh.
And so we're probably so that's kind of, we do podcasts like this.
Yeah. Alchemical Dialogues
Yep.
and Unraveling Religion are like cousins.
Yes, we are. And I write blogs, and I'm starting to write essays, and we're going to start doing some workshops. I'm going to do a workshop in the spring with one of the students studying with me about the Aramaic prayer,
Yeah.
and that'll be open to anybody.
Cool.
And then we're going to do one in the fall that I got to really think about. I think I mentioned it to you, on revisiting the ego.
Uh huh. Yeah.
Mystics who talk about the ego, it has always bothered me, and that's what I want to
Sure.
have this workshop on.
Yeah.
Both of those will be somewhat time limited. They won't go on forever.
Yep.
And then a couple of other panel discussions on spirituality and religion. I mentioned that to you, the difference between the two.
Yep. So let me ask you, like, we're approaching your house. We
Yep.
left your house
Yes,
a
we
while
did.
ago. We've been on the
Yeah,
path,
perfect. Yes.
and now I'm just wondering, do you have any final thoughts or reflections that you want to share?
The integration that's happening now in me, that's the most meaningful thing
Oh,
for me. That's the most meaningful experience that I can, that I'm feeling.
yeah.
When I got into Sufism, that helped a lot. Where I didn't feel like, well, I have to put on my psychiatry hat and I have to put on this other hat.
Right.
Things really started to come together.
Yeah.
And then when I trusted myself with the help of my teacher, who really urged me to really trust myself
Yep.
and to use my skills and not to be so wedded to, you have to have a credential or recognition from this organization.
Right.
And, like I said, with Thomas More and make it your own,
Yep.
that has been, it's affected my personal life, it's
Oh.
affected and it helped that I retired, but not being part of any bureaucracy
Yeah.
and keeping Amberlight
Free.
pretty low key, so
Yeah.
it's not this big bureaucracy that I
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
worry about.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that was an amazing freeing up experience.
Liberation. Huh?
Oh yeah. I think if I had the wisdom to do that
Yep.
when I was younger, I might have been able to finesse it better.
Yeah.
If I had more than that, if I had had the courage to know, no, I'm playing a game that needs to be played,
Right.
but really, there's something else going on.
Right.
I think I would have felt better faster, but that's hindsight, Who knows?
Well, Henry, I want to thank you for this walk
Yeah,
and talk.
thank you. Yeah.
It's been really nice. Thanks.